First Republican President Kenneth Kaunda by Evaristo Mupeta, the right forefinger raised and his twinkling eyes looking at the mammoth crowd gathered on a hilly place called Buntungwa Park in Chingola's Nchanga North Township. Dr. Kenneth Kaunda's musical voice resonated with great persuasion and power. It was mid-1980 and Zambia was in her 16th year of independence. I was a 22-year lad and politically conscious, and as is characteristic of youth, with rebellion of some sort, but not a rebel, to absent myself from the rally of that day. Buntungwa Park, Buntungwa meaning freedom, a large portion of land, at its lowest slope with a rectangular open shed with an elevated dais, built from concrete stones and the shed's roof of corrugated iron sheets, constructed specifically for capacity gatherings, was just 150 meters away and very visible from my home. I could not miss the meeting, not when the speaker was Dr. Kaunda, or KK as we fondly called him, the president of our country. Now, 38 years later, I can still recall some of the things Dr. Kaunda said. Apart from reaffirming Zambia's support for the liberation struggle in southern Africa, he lashed out at the critics of the government. I remember that one of the national newspapers the following day carried a front-page caption like this: "Kaunda whips idiots." December 1985, Dr. Kaunda invites us to State House while at Mupeta Teachers Training College, MTTC, where I was pursuing a primary school teacher's course. I was the president of the college's Student Representative Council, SRC, and was one of the 2 student leaders of our college privileged to travel to State House for the meeting held in one of the lounges of State House. Whichever position seated at each one of us students had proximity to him, though he was in front with some of his aides. The furthest distance the student leader, who sat at the back from Dr. Kaunda, was a mere 10 meters. The nearest distance of those who sat in front of Dr. Kaunda was 1 meter. None of us could be distracted from having a clear view of him anyway. We, the student leaders from all of the higher institutions of learning in the country, numbered just 25 or so. It was an eye-to-eye meeting. After he had warmly welcomed us, Dr. Kaunda gave a short keynote speech and then asked members of the press to leave. In his speech he said that he had officially stopped visiting the University of Zambia, UNZA, because the students of that institution, who he regarded as his children, had been hurling insults at him. After his opening address, the president sat down. He asked the student leaders of each institution to stand, go to the front close to him, and mention the problems they were facing. The UNZA Great East Road campus president was the first one to speak, after which Dr. Kaunda commented on what the student leader had presented. Then the UNZA Ridgeway campus was the second to present the grievances, followed by the same routine of Dr. Kaunda making his own comments. As he did so, some of the UNZA student leaders were interjecting to what he was saying. What we had in defiance, he also had in much diplomacy. Our art of confrontation he met with consultation. Third was Evelyn Hone College, EHC, students. By the time the EHC leader had spoken and Dr. Kaunda given his remarks, the deliberations had devoured all of the time allotted for the meeting. It was lunchtime, but some of us from other institutions of learning had not yet spoken. Dr. Kaunda in a magnanimous manner intervened. We would reconvene after lunch to continue the meeting. That was Dr. Kaunda. He was for fair play. He could breach protocol because he wanted emotive issues to be discussed exhaustively. It was an outdoor lunch. With our host Dr. Kaunda leading the way, we left the State House lounge to descend the stairs. We walked on the green manicured lawn to go beneath a large tree where we would eat. The chef had done the best to prepare a delicious and sumptuous 3-course meal perfectly laid on the tables. Our adjourning for lunch added to his friendliness and courtesy. There were no inhibitions. Some of us, as soon as we had finished eating, went to Dr. Kaunda and chatted with him briefly. It was self-service lunch. It was hospitality at its best to see Dr. Kaunda hand a plate to each one of us. It was hilarious. It was an invitation we honored. It was an invitation we enjoyed. January 1986, speech to my fellow students on Sunday, January 19, 1986. After coming back from State House, superior to the inspiration from Dr. Kaunda, I delivered to a packed student audience of my college, Mupeta Teachers Training College, MTTC, a speech calling for the implementation of radical student reforms, including giving union status to the institution's Student Representative Council, SRC, and improvement in diet. Unlike that day I had gone to listen to Dr. Kaunda's speech at the park, the real rebellious me came out. I could be defiant and differential when convinced I was doing the right thing. As summer's heat easily percolated through the large windows of our rectangular college hall 20 meters away from the Mupeta Kitway Road, my audible voice in crescendos reached out to the 300 fellow students present. Everyone was attentive, applauding cheerfully whenever I scored a point. It was eloquence irresistible to none at all. Sharp, elaborate and tingled with a persuasion that would have motivated the listeners to take the corresponding action almost there and then, and for the larger part darting my shiny brown eyes from one part of the audience to the other as if it was not a prepared speech. But the speech which I had labored to prepare myself was there with me on the pulpit. December 1980, first time to State House at Dr. Kaunda's invitation. I had been to State House before when Dr. Kaunda invited us in December 1980 while attending the United National Independence Party (UNIP) Youth League Congress at Changwe Secondary School. His presence was captivating, not so much that we were staunch party cadres as his inherent spirit and charisma as a great leader to inspire. When he hammered a point, it was just irresistible for us to stand up and cheer. Our president had spoken, we applauded in cheers that echoed through the semi-rural town of Changwe. We cheered not because we had much energy as young people but because Dr. Kaunda had spoken with wisdom. Each one of us, the 1,500 delegates, when we went to State House ate a good meal, however perhaps unmindful that the funds dispersed on our food had to tore a hole into the national coffers, for the money was not paid by UNIP itself but by the government. The party was the government and the government was the party in those years, hence the formal connotation, the party and its government, in all that was being said and done during that time. That inseparability between UNIP and the government made UNIP's actions no less detrimental as of making the party the unchallengeable accessor to state funds. We had a socialist and communist way of running the government, and communism in its indoctrination had pampered us really bad on how not to clearly distinguish between government resources and resources of the party. The problem with communism is that everything is the same. Blue is black, red is black, white is black, one unchangeable color. Even the suppression of people's basic human rights. Communism is not irked to see the illegitimacy of such oppression. We returned to Changwe, to the politics of succumbency and sloganeering of the typical one-party era we had enmeshed ourselves into. It was campaign time for a new National Youth League Executive Committee. We started campaigning, and some of us, being the young people we were, our voices became charged with making noise, Congo, which, for its meaninglessness, simply got drained in Changwe's streams. Part 2, the impact of his economy. If as pupils we had the eagerness when I started grade 1 at Old Nchanga Primary School in Chingola in 1969 to have our exercise books marked, we had also the mischief of peeping outside our classroom windows for a dairy produce board (DPB) vehicle that daily brought packets of blue pyramid-shaped fresh milk for each one of us pupils to receive freely during break time. After drinking the milk from the packets as we gazed at the clear African sky, if it was summer, we returned to the classroom more keen to learn and sometimes to be boisterous, but not the boisterousness our class teacher Mrs. Mwenya, who had the authority of a cop and a mother's mercy, could not handle. December 1986, on successful completion of my primary teacher's course at Mufulira Teachers Training College, MTTC. Remember I said earlier on that I was at MTTC, thanks to Dr. Kaunda for the free education he rolled out nationally from grade 1 to university levels. I gladly boarded a minibus back to Chingola, my hometown. Alas, it was not the Chingola of the cleanest status in the whole country that I knew of. I found Chingola, my Chingola. Its charcoal black tarmac roads were littered with garbage and debris of glasses and assorted merchandise abandoned here and there. Chingola, my Chingola, the conveyor belt, the smelter, the workers' alleys, the tunnels, the roads, the machines in the entire mining premises that gave Chingola the distinctiveness and proud as a thriving copper mining town, were as silent as graveyards and tools long abandoned. Production of copper stalled, an enormous loss of foreign exchange was recorded. Chingola, my Chingola, I mourned to see the desolation that now prevailed in the town of my upbringing. People had been rioting against the party and its government's withdrawal of subsidies on meal, Zambia's staple food, a situation that had now caused the increase in the prices of the commodity. Instinctively, my mind, like a newly bought Ford Cortina overspeeding on the Kitwe Ndola Road, retraced memories of Mr. Jason Kafula, who was my civics teacher at Chingola Secondary School, one of the best high schools in the country, a school I shall always feel proud to have been at from Form 1 to Form 5, 1977 to 1981. Ask me if as a new student I suffered the scornful attitude by some of those in forms higher than me of being called Zay, the demeaning name for a fresher of our high school. I would assert in the negative. In my own right, I can say in an unassuming way that I used confidence, leadership and intelligence as soon as I first entered the gates of that school. For 3 years running, I was one of the brightest pupils in civics and in history and chosen to serve as class monitor in Form 3. But I struggled in mathematics and pure sciences. Yes, I had my own peculiarity, which was why, I believe, they appointed me the head boy of the school from 1980-1981. With the lessons in public speaking, our school's current affairs and debating club, of which I was a member, had been drilling into me, and now having the urge to pioneer the formation of a UNIP Youth League branch at our school, asserting myself as a boy of precociousness was just a matter of time. Then happened my deep appreciation to our headmaster, Mr. Victor Lupeta, who gave me permission to address my fellow 200 students on the Friday morning of the 21st of March 1980, a sunny morning, during the routine assembly. In a speech about the importance of having the UNIP Youth League at Chingola, and characterized by my high, electrifying and authoritative voice, it took just a minute into the speech to hold the students spellbound. By the time I had finished speaking, after about 6 minutes later, the crowd had en masse thunderously applauded more than 8 times, then at last gave a prolonged applause. The delivery of that speech transitioned me into the realm of being rated by all as an outstanding public speaker. From that Friday I gave the speech, it became the strong conviction of the school authority and the student community as a whole that come October, 7 months later, when the head boy was chosen, I would no doubt be the one to occupy the position. Thank God, truly, the school authority's decision to choose me as the head boy was overwhelming, not me calling the head boyship to myself. Me, the lover of public speaking as William Shakespeare loved the sonnets. Me, the lover of Shakespeare's works no less the student of leadership. It was as much remembering the tall, athletic and casual figure of Mr. Kafula as his pampering me with economic theories, that inflation is a scenario of too much money chasing too few commodities, while deflation is whereby little money in circulation is after many goods. Inflation, characterized by high prices of goods, became the order of the day in Zambia, especially after 1985. We did not need to delve deeper to understand that Countonomics had failed. The International Monetary Fund (IMF), to which Zambia had run to fore, came with an avalanche of conditionalities. When the men from Bretton Woods carrying those shiny briefcases came, we admired their immaculate suits but dreaded to hear and read the contents of the papers they drew out of their briefcases. The words devaluation, removal of state subsidies, wage freeze, controlling the trade unions and cutting public expenditure became embedded in the Zambian vocabulary as though the words were part of the country's DNA long before the country came into being. Cry Zambia, the troubled, frail and bedridden patient she had become, had no choice but to face the ordeal of forcefully opening her own mouth, otherwise the financial lending institutions would open Zambia's mouth, swallow at prescribed times the dosage of the bitter tablets that, in the long run, only worsened her economic illness. Zambia was facing, not the travails of labor, of birthing, or producing more copper to boost her GDP, but the pain of swallowing the tablets. Cry Zambia, she gnashed her teeth in pain and her face became grimaced with wrinkles. Our eyes became sore in waiting for free milk that would now never come. The sky became filled with darkness. We ran to our schools and government printing presses for free exercise books, as we had been doing, only to be told that we must now buy our own books. The everyday and egg for everyone Dr. Kaunda had promised was replaced with a forgetfulness that linger up to today. So, by the close of 1986, and the years that followed, seemingly, Dr. Kaunda had no idiots to criticize, only facing the idiosyncrasies for the complexity of Zambia's economic problems amidst great expectations for answers by everyone in the nation. Part 3, the impact of his leadership. October 1991, last time at Dr. Kaunda's election campaign rally 10 years after my listening to Dr. Kaunda's speech at Buntungwa. Profound political changes, due to Zambia's worsening economic situation, began to unfold in the country. In the United Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, the leading communist state, the General Party secretaryship and presidency in 1995 changed hands to Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev, who soon embarked on radical reforms of glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring reforms that swirled with such rapidity and mammoth impact that the communism Eastern Europe had been extolling and boasting about for many years collapsed overnight. The far-reaching impact on Zambia of the suddenly changed political landscape in Eastern Europe was the acceleration to revert from a singular party state to a multi-party one. But Dr. Kaunda came up with the idea of holding a referendum to determine the necessity of returning to plural politics. Vehemently, when Dr. Kaunda was told that it was not the referendum the Zambian people wanted, he floated another idea. He then chose to democratize UNIP so that others unlike before could challenge him for the party and Republican presidency. Defiantly, when Dr. Kaunda read the signs of the times, he fortified his system. The many voices in the nation pressing for multi-party politics to be reintroduced became militant. Reluctantly, Dr. Kaunda, when he gauged the intensity of the people's voices, then repealed Article 4(1) of the Republican Constitution that hitherto had restricted the existence of other political parties other than UNIP. All of a sudden, opposition political parties of all shades and hues sprang up like mushrooms at the fall of the first heavy rain. It was like almost everyone wanted to form a political party, just as nearly everyone wants to start a church these days. From one-man briefcase political parties to seemingly family ones, parties, though however small their contribution in reshaping and enhancing Zambia's multi-party era dispensation could not be underestimated, to the national, magnanimous and people's favorite at that time, Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, MMD, soon election campaigns by the different political parties and their stakeholders were in full swing. Dr. Kaunda, as expected, was foremost in crisscrossing the country to convince the voters to re-elect him. Kuamwa, one of the rural towns of Luapula province, he campaigned in just a week before the 31st of October 1991 general elections had a correlation to mine. I had been posted and seconded to teach English, civics and history at Kuamwa's Mupeta basic school. There I was again, like I had done at Buntungwa in Chingola 11 years earlier. I was among the crowd that listened to his speech, a speech though that was not as inspiring to the people as the ones he had delivered at the pinnacle of his popularity. Resolutely, even when Dr. Kaunda discerned the people's anti-UNIP mood, he defended his manifesto. My returning to teach the following day took a new dimension. When during the third period for another subject in the grade 9 class 1 got a new, long and rock-hard piece of white chalk and wrote on the blackboard the words civics in capital letters that stood and looked as straight, distinct and bold as pieces of thin metal that had been pre-measured to perfectly fit on an object. Mr. Stencil, which was the nickname the pupils had given me for the way my right hand wrote and still writes large, straight and orderly letters, a boy's hoarse voice was heard at the back of the classroom, followed by laughter, not of a conspiratorial kind but of appreciation. I chuckled with relief for the name because the pupils could sometimes be merciless at sticking a horrible nickname at a teacher's back. When I turned my back, everyone became conspicuously quiet, some pretending to be reading, their eyes blinking and their faces glowing and looking more youthful. I was about to continue writing when James, the pupil seated on the front desk, asked, "Sir, who do you think will win the presidential elections, Dr. Kaunda or Mr. Frederick Shaluba?" James? James, of all the pupils who I knew, was a withdrawn and introverted boy. James, the student of his own silences, though he was intelligent. Yet it was from him that a question of such gravity, urgency and topicality came. Before I could answer the question, roars of "The hour has come" and "UNIP Kuya Bebel" boomed from the whole class almost in a synchronized or rehearsed pattern. "The hour has come" was the MMD's election campaign slogan. The slogan assumed so popular status that it was like the formal or informal way of greeting someone in Zambia, while "UNIP Kuya Bebel" is a pidgin saying in Bemba meaning UNIP as a ruling party must vacate office. The unanimity with which the pupils said the words, combined with the uniformity and beauty of the blue pair of trousers and white shirts for boys and blue skirts and white shirts for girls, made them look and sound not as pupils but a group of well-organized football supporters at Lusaka's Independence Stadium who were very sure that the Zambian football team, the Chipolo Polo Boys, would, in a decisive Africa Cup of Nations match, beat the formidable rival by many goals. Heroism, but the political developments of transition to the re-establishment of the multi-party era were paradoxical. The leader of indisputable magnanimity and heroism was Dr. Kaunda because he agreed to every concession that was put before him. However much he was asked to let go, he let go. He deserves credit. He conceded to the fundamental changes that coursed Zambia, to the politics of pluralism. For the sake of Zambia, the country he loves. Unlike some other presidents, when the telltale signs for them to leave office are clear, bring in unsavory measures including violence against their own citizens, Dr. Kaunda remained the president of honor and dignity. He was and still is, he the people's demands and eventually did what they wanted. Despite the cutthroat rivalry that often characterized politics in any country of the world, in spite of all sorts of criticisms and spiteful statements hurled against him, Dr. Kaunda did it. He successfully facilitated Zambia's smooth progression and transition to the multi-party system. When the election's results were announced declaring Mr. Frederick Shaluba as the winner and Zambia's new president, Dr. Kaunda conceded defeat. A lot has happened after Zambia's return to multi-party democracy. Mr. Shaluba quickly introduced a free market economy. The men from Bretton Woods arrived in Lusaka sooner than we knew. This time, we loved both their immaculate suits and the contents of their briefcases. They may not have mentioned the fat burger, the double and cheese steak burger, fried chickens from Kentucky and other American fast foods, but by modeling our economy to theirs and lending us more of their USA dollars, we have become hooked to America foods and food chain stores. We moved from socialism to capitalism, from lethargy to liberalization, from inertia to innovation, from drowsiness to drastic measures, from the comatose to competition. We moved to the dynamics of capitalism. A true man of the people, I was an unknown student leader when Dr. Kaunda invited us to State House. I was the son of a miner. There were others better placed and well-known than me who he hosted. Those who interacted with him on a daily basis. The government ministers, businessmen, clergy, trade unionists, farmers, those in the sports fraternity and many more. Each one of these Dr. Kaunda met because he truly cared for them, not out of duty. His informality, his grace, his poise, his joviality, his humor and even his brutal frankness has made a difference in many people's lives. For Dr. Kaunda, it was not enough to see those he had hosted at State House leave. He would usually stand at the door of the State House to bid them farewell by waving the white handkerchief which he always held in his hand. As historians and political pundits continue to write about what Dr. Kaunda has done and what he has not done, they shall continue to put his works on the scale and ask, has his goodness outweighed the bad, his strengths the weaknesses and his fortitude the fears? Thank Dr. Kaunda for your leadership in freeing Zambia from colonial rule, for your patriarchal role in the nation, for fostering into Zambia a great sense of belonging, nationhood, peace, stability and sovereignty. Thank Dr. Kaunda for your resolve and steadfastness that made Zambia immensely contribute to the liberation struggles in southern Africa, for making us take the oppression, injustice and exploitation of our brothers and sisters who were under oppression that time as our own. Of those who learnt from Dr. Kaunda, they are several. Except for Frederick Chiluba, his immediate successor, successive presidents were protégés of Dr. Kaunda. Mr. Levi Mwanawasa, Mr. Rupia Banda, Mr. Michael Sada, each one of them consulted Dr. Kaunda. Even Mr. Edgar Lungu, Zambia's incumbent president, seeks advice from Dr. Kaunda. For me, that his leadership impacted me is all too clear. On a Chingola secondary school current affairs and debating club certificate on which the club patron Mr. Edward N.K. owned and the deputy headmistress Ms. Dorothy Mwenya, different from the one who had taught me in grade 1, respectively, on the 20th of October 1981, wrote these words: Evaristo has few equals in the world of public speaking. He was an emulator of the great leaders of the world. He is a well-informed speaker in many disciplines. No wonder he was the school's head boy, club patron. Evaristo was a capable leader. He passed votes of thanks at a number of social and political occasions. He did it ably and magnificently. Deputy Headmistress. Dr. Kaunda is certainly one of the leaders who, in my quest during my youth to learn, inquisitive as I have been about leadership, who through his speeches and writings shaped my political ideas. Of equal importance have also been Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., John F. Kennedy, Sir Winston Churchill, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, about whose lives and works I have studied. Our dear Dr. Kaunda, as much I have directly or indirectly been in wishing you the best on your previous birthdays, me, the lad you have schooled in the art of politics and its vagaries, in glee and grace, is at your doorstep to wish you, like many other Zambians and people around the world, the same on your 94th one. Happy birthday.